Welcome back to another video, and we're going to cover the 10 things that I've learned over the last couple of years about traumas and the mind-body connection and how these can relate to us and help us understand a little bit more about who we are, how we navigate our emotions. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around for the video. We're going to go through the 10 things right now. Number one, what we think the actual problem is never the root problem. So we use a technique called BioEnergetic Synchronisation Technique, and it's a process that allows you to identify and pinpoint the specific subconscious blocks and the specific thought patterns that are creating what's called reactive thoughts within a person that is putting their autonomic nervous system out of balance and creating what's called segmentation. Now, throughout hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sessions, the results have always been very, very similar. And what we find is that a lot of people, when they come to do sessions, specifically when they come to do work, they know they have a problem, they know they have an issue, and they want to work on that issue. So say, for example, the issue is something like, I have challenges with my spouse, or I get angry in these certain circumstances, or I want to get better at doing X, Y, and Z, but every time I think about doing it, I feel sad, I feel depressed, or I feel off to some degree, and I'm just frustrated, or I feel like I'm just angry, or I feel like I'm just sad. And these are the emotions that they come present the problem with. And when we invariably go and test them, we do what's called an arm test to test to see whether that specific thought that they're thinking about is what's called reactive or not, is causing an impact. Usually when we test on that specific emotion, where they say, hey, I have this experience that makes me feel angry, we test on anger, the arm is actually strong. And it shows that the emotion of anger actually isn't affecting them in that specific way. What we find instead is that rather than it being anger, it might be in another emotion like inspired or gratitude or happiness. And these are the emotions that actually key in when that person is thinking about that specific thought. So when they are thinking about that experience that is causing them what they think in their mind is actually anger, what we're actually finding out is that the body and their subconscious mind is actually encoding that experience in a feeling of happiness instead, and saying that this is actually the feeling that we need to use to unlock that experience and balance it. And the reason why what we logically think that the problem is never really the actual problem, is that if we could logically figure out what our specific challenge is, we would have already solved it with the resources that we've had already, which is our logical thought and our own processes. And the reason why we haven't been able to do that is because we're stuck in a frame of mind that we are unable to see that specific challenge in a light that is able to resolve it right now. I'm not saying that it can never be resolved. It's just saying that the current resources and the current perspective that we're looking at it in is usually not able to resolve that challenge at this specific time. So if we just know that what we think the problem is logically, it never is the actual problem, then it's going to allow us to search for more tools and think about, okay, what are these other things? And to start to do a lot more digging. It's going to open up that ability to dig for more stuff. Number two, you cannot prejudge a person's unique trauma or problem and its impact on that person's individual life. So what does this mean? It means that we're all different people. We all have different experiences. We all have different upbringings. I'm Australian Asian. I was born in Sydney. I was born and raised in Sydney. I'm from the 90s, a different generation from people who were born in the post 2000s, and which is also different from the baby boomer generation, which is also different from people who were born in the 1950s, etc., etc., etc. So we all have different experiences. I grew up in a very privileged life to be here in Australia, where things are very relatively calm and very relatively stable. Other people have had different experiences where they grew up in a different environment, whether they've either had, for example, more money or less money, or with better conditions or worse conditions, right? But each individual person in their life, they value different things. They have different things that are important to them. They have different things that affect them and impact them specifically differently, because they have a different life from what we are living, right? Not prejudge a specific person's problem or trauma and its impact on their life. So for example, The student who's in year 12, they're in the HSC, then the final exam, they're sitting for their advanced English test. They get in the test, rock up to the test. They're all nervous and stuff, and they sit down at the exam. The teachers come around, they hand out the papers, right? And everything that they have lived up until this point has been conditioned to get them to believe the importance of this test. The teacher says, all right, you have an hour and a half, start. So then they look down at their piece of paper. They open it up, read through the questions. Say, oh, this looks pretty hard. This looks pretty hard. Oh, this looks pretty hard. This looks pretty hard. They look at a question, and the specific text that's in there was something that they did not study. All of a sudden, traumatic experience, problem. Everything's going down, right? In their mind, this is a big, big problem. Objectively speaking, it's just a test, right? You're writing some stuff on a piece of paper. It has a lot of value and a lot of meaning to it for the implications of your future, right? But for another person who grew up in a different life, where maybe they didn't have the privilege of going through education, and they're just purely in a survival mode, they're in like a third world country or something like that, their level of trauma is very, very different. They wake up and they say, wow, I'm glad there's food on the table. I'm glad we have a place to sleep. And not being able to even have a house, or not being able to even find food for today is a big deal. Or, I don't even know where my next meal is, right? I don't know where the next thing is going to be. So it's a different level. We have different experiences, but they affect us differently. It's more about the impact on that person's nervous system, the impact on that person's body, the impact on that person's life. The impact of their problem is just the same, or the intensity of the effect that they feel of the impact of that problem or that trauma is the same and has the same ripple effect in that person's life as someone else in a different experience. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of variability in terms of very, very heavy trauma as opposed to micro traumas and things that aren't as serious. But if we're talking about in a general sense, everybody has these situations where they have different problems, different anxieties, and different stresses in their life. And in a general sense, each of these stresses affect different people differently because they have different values in their life, they have different experiences, and they have different upbringing. So this is number 2. Number 3, we generally have the same theme of emotional issues, either anger, guilt, sadness, anxiety, all these things. We have a general theme. The only difference is that we have different contexts and different experiences and different intensities for each of these ones, based on who we are and the experiences that we've had. I'll tell you a story. So back in the day, maybe like a decade ago, I was in the personal development circuit a lot. So I used to go to a lot of events, and the events in particular, Millionaire Mind Intensive, with T. Harv Eker. They would do a couple of processes around your relationship with money, specifically because it was a money event. So they would do these processes. I think on the second or the third day, it was a 3-day event, and you would deal with these emotions differently. So like they would have a process to go through the anger around it. They would have a process to go through the guilt around the different experiences you've had around money and different people in your life around that. They would have a different process to go through the sadness. And what I would find would be that a lot of the people, the event would probably have maybe 2,000, 3,000 people in it. A lot of people, and all of these people are going through the event together. They're all going through their own individual personal experiences, being guided through probably a timeline therapy or some kind of guided meditation. And as they're releasing these emotions, you can physically feel in the room, physically feel the emotions that people have pent up and stored up around these things. And it's there, it's viscerally there. And you can, and what's interesting is that you go and talk to people that are in the event. So after the event, you'll go, hey, part of the exercise, you go and talk to people and you talk to them about their specific issues. And what you would find is that people have the same thing. They have the same issue. They have the same feelings of anger around people who did them wrong, resentment around, deals that they had, or like, their parents, or things that were taught in school, or like that person that came into their life and said this and that to them. They would have these different emotions that are all very, very similar. About 80% of people would have very similar experiences, just with different people in different contexts and in different intensities. Obviously there are the outliers that have intense emotional triggers or intense emotional experiences because of the events that specifically happen to them around these topics. But generally, we all have very, very similar themes, and it's very interesting that once you realize that other people are pretty much going through the same thing that you are, they're feeling the same emotions that you are, of anger, of rage, of frustration, anxiety, sadness, in these different areas, and you start to realize, hey, this is normal. This is just a normal human experience to feel these negative emotions. And once we start to realize that, we can start to relate to other people and not feel that, not put people on a pedestal and say, hey, look, this person has their life together. Obviously, on the outside, they look like this. And then we compare ourselves to them, and we start feeling inferior to that. So it's very important to understand that we are all humans and we're all people, and we're all going through very, very similar experiences, and we just have different contexts. Number 4, there's always another layer. So what this means is that life is an ongoing process. Life is an ongoing journey. It's always growing. It's a journey, not the destination. We're always going through stuff. And what we realized is that over the course of going through different clearings and going through different modalities, I found that myself personally, is that as you strip off the layers that are on the surface, the superficial layers, and as you work through some of the stuff, more stuff comes up. More stuff comes up because we've lived a very large majority of our life. Even if you're like 13, 14, 15 years old, still have had 13, 14, 15 years of experiences to build up a bank of negative experiences. But most of us, we're 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60. If we're at this age group, we never worked on any of our stuff. We have heaps and heaps and heaps of experiences that continually need to be worked on, because it's probably been layered again and again and again over the different years. So number 5, forgiveness is for you. It's never for the other person. So forgiveness is for you. It's never for the other person. Forgiveness is for you, never for the other person. Let me say this again. Number 5, forgiveness is for you, never for the other person. And the reason why I say this is that holding on to resentment is a very difficult thing. There's a quote that says, holding on to resentment is almost the same as drinking poison, expecting the other person to die, right? We're holding on to this thing, allowing it to bottle up inside of us, allowing it to cause us damage on the inside, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally. We think about this thing all day. How did this person wrong us? How could they do this? How could they say this to us? I thought we were friends. I thought we were family, etc., etc., etc. There's all these emotions, and then when you hold on to that so tightly, it causes issues. I mean, it creates a feeling of uneasiness inside of ourselves, and then it eats away at us internally. And usually that's not a good sign. If you hold on to that kind of stuff for 10, 15, 20 years, eventually something's going to give. Number 6, your willingness to make a change determines the level of result you're going to get. So your willingness to do something about your situation, your willingness to work on your stuff, the willingness to work on your emotions and your body and your mind is going to determine the level of results and the level of change they're going to experience. How committed are you to changing your situation? How committed are you to changing that specific thing? So in the technique that we use, BioEnergetic Synchronisation Technique, they have what's called passive and active healing. Whereas usually when you go to someone, you go to someone with the intent of, okay, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to go, and they're going to do this stuff to me, or they're going to do some energy work on me, or they're going to do some, etc., etc., etc. They're going to give me something, they're going to give me a technique, and I don't really have to do much. I just have to sit there and experience the service that they're going to provide. Whereas active healing, so that one is more of a passive approach. And active healing is when you are actively going in and you are doing the work yourself. You're providing your own stimulus, your own lists, and your own things, and you are also going inside your own self and your own mind, and you're doing the work yourself. Usually when you have more of an active creative approach, you have a greater level of change. Most of the cases, this is the generalization, obviously. So usually when you have more of an active participative role in your own change, you have a greater and deeper level of change. Number 7, the subconscious mind and the body prioritizes survival always. So it always has a focus on surviving, has a main focus on surviving and maintaining the whole body and the whole system and keeping that whole system alive. It understands the different components of the systems that operate and function within your body. It also understands, it has an innate intelligence that is going to determine or understands what the sequencing that is required in order for your body to actually repair itself, to heal itself, and create the most optimal outcome for its own survival in the way that the subconscious mind and the body thinks. And this is probably developed over years and years and years and years and years, or developed over thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolutionary human, just a body just wanting to survive on a primal level. It's adapted to its conditions. It's always adapting to its conditions, always priming itself for survival. If you think about every single animal or every single organism that's out there, even down to the single cell bacteria or the single cell, whatever it is, molecule, it's always priming itself for survival. It's doing whatever it can to survive. That is the utmost priority for itself. So our body and our system is built in the same way. We designed to survive. And sometimes we express that, and that manifests in ways that we don't logically understand, we don't logically think. Like, okay, our body is now putting more attention towards working on maybe like our stomach, right? Whereas we're having like skin issues, and we think that, oh, okay, well, skin issues is more important than the stomach. And the body goes, no, we need to work on the stomach first, and then work on the skin issue. Whereas we logically might think, well, my skin is what's being shown to other people. I would prefer to work on my skin issue first, right? When I was going through topical steroid withdrawal for like 5 years, I realized something, that my skin, the skin that I had was going at the height of the crisis of detox, the height of my healing crisis. I so wanted my body to heal the skin first, but then I also understood that, okay, these systems within myself have also been compromised for so long that the body requires time to repair those first before it deals with the skin. And although the skin is such a big issue because it's a front-facing thing, it's what people see every day, it's what I experience every day, it's what I live in every day, the other systems within my body, the other organs, are probably more important to deal with, to detox first, than the skin. So there's a priority of how these things work, and just understanding that, feeling the innate intelligence that's within your own body and trusting its ability to figure itself out, the correct sequence it needs to go into. Obviously, if you need help, if you have challenges, if you have health challenges that are very, very difficult, you do need to seek professional help. Number 8, the subconscious mind and the body speak a completely different language than what we speak with each other. So what this basically means is that there are different elements of the brain. There's the left hemisphere, there's the right hemisphere, there's the cerebellum, there's all these different parts of the brain that communicate and function in different ways. And they communicate in ways and in languages that we don't logically understand ourselves. We don't logically communicate to our brain. So like a good example of this is like, have you ever had a problem where you logically can walk through the problem, you understand what is happening? And this happens a lot. So like we were in a conversation with someone the other day, and she was like, we got into an argument, we got into a scuffle, right? Of sorts. We got into an argument, we got into a scuffle, we got into a heated discussion, right? Crucial conversations, the book that I'm reading, right? We got into a crucial conversation, and got to a point in the conversation where I was like, look, all right, I logically understand your point of view. I logically understand why you're upset. I logically understand why you feel like that, but I can't shake how I feel about the situation. I still feel upset. I still feel, even though I logically know your point of view, even though I logically understand your argument and I logically stand my position, and there's no bad blood there, I still feel annoyed. I still feel frustrated about the current situation, how it's turned out, how we've handled it, and I just can't shake it, right? So the body system is still there's two different types, right? There's the logical understanding, then there's the emotional side, and then there's the kinesthetic, and it's hardwired into how your physical body is, communicating with other parts of your body, right? And number 9, your body remembers everything. It records everything. There's a book called Your Body Keeps Score. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of stuff that's out there about how your body records things. The body and the mind is almost like a camera. It's like a film, right? It's recording every single experience that you're having. You're having 4 billion to 4 trillion bits of information coming all the time, every single second. And it's like a camera. If you imagine a film or a camera that's recording constantly, it's capturing every single picture that it sees. It's every single little detail. But we consciously can only really interpret just a little fraction of that part of that picture of what we can focus on. But the camera is actually recording everything, right? Our body is the same, our mind is the same. It's recording every single thing, but we consciously are only really processing only certain parts of that are important to us. But it doesn't mean that those things that we're processing, or the things that we're not processing, is not being stored in the body. It's not being recorded in the body. And it's important that we understand that as these things are recorded, they can have also an impact on our body, even though we don't really acknowledge them consciously. That's why the subconscious mind is such an important thing, because it knows the priority, it knows what's happened to the body, it knows the traumas and the micro traumas and the different experiences that it's been through, even though we logically and consciously have not tried to figure it out. And this goes back to the first point, which is what we think logically is never really the actual problem, because usually we would have been able to figure it out if it was a logical problem, because all this data, the 99.9% that's being recorded and is impacting us, it's very difficult for us to use that 1% of our conscious mind to try and filter out through all that stuff that's happening in the subconscious. It's happening automatically, right? It's almost like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's not going to happen. So your body records everything. Very important to know that this is a concept. Number 10, we all harbor stuff internally that we definitely do not want to tell other people, but they impact us every single day. We all have these experiences that, well, they're called skeletons in the closet. We all have these things that, these events and these things that have definitely impacted our life, yet it's very difficult to tell people about them. And a majority of people generally have at least 1, 2, 3, or dozens of these experiences that they do not share. And number 2, they either do not. So number 1, they do not share, or number 2, they either don't remember because their mind has completely blacked it out, which is a very interesting thing that happens. Our conscious mind has probably blacked it out to basically protect us from the trauma, because we don't know how to actually deal with it internally. There was a video that Gary Vee posted, and he was talking to a guy in the hallway, in the corridor or something like that. And the guy was like to him, I have this successful business, I make all this money, etc., etc., but I'm still not happy. Why am I not happy inside? And Gary tells the guy, and is like, hey, we all have this thing inside of us, that we want to get out, but we're scared to tell people what it is. You got to get the poison out, and that's what he says. You got to get the poison out. And this is what this concept is. When I was going through the personal development space and getting exposed to all these different types of modalities that people were going through, that were making shifts in their mind, shifts in their emotions, there's like timeline therapy, there's things like hypnosis, there's things like BioEnergetic Synchronisation Technique, things like EFT, guided meditations, all these different things. All these different things are designed to help you feel better, help you release the things that you're holding on to, help you release the emotional baggage that you have hidden inside there. And it's sometimes very difficult to explain some of the things that you've experienced. Number 1, because you basically just don't want to share it with someone else. It's very difficult to even just get to the point of talking about it. But number 2, you might not even remember it. You might have had such a traumatic experience that you completely blacked it out. There's a thing that happens in timeline therapy, right? When you basically float up above the timeline of all the experiences that you've had in your past. And sometimes, with some cases, what I've seen, or what I've experienced with some other people, is that they have completely blacked out some of the experiences in their timeline, and it actually shows up as like basically black pictures, whereas the rest of the timeline, they have like clear pictures of events that they've specifically had, going all the way back to their childhood, right? but then there are some events that are just completely blacked out. They just don't know what happened, right? And it's a very interesting phenomenon that happens. But it's just an indicator that maybe that some of these things are quite difficult to process, and we just don't remember consciously what these things are. But remember, going back to point number 9, your mind and your subconscious body remembers everything. It records everything, even though we consciously don't know what those experiences are. They're there, they impact us, they affect us. These are just some of the things that I've learned over the years, over going through a lot of these different experiences about traumas, micro traumas, and how the mind and body and the mind-body connection works. And I hope you got some value out of this video. This is obviously not an extensive thing. These are just my opinions. If you agree or disagree, leave a comment in below. I'd like to hear your opinion. I'd like to hear if any of these things resonate with you. If you've been to any of these events, if you experienced any of these modalities, it'd be very interesting to hear your opinion. And again, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. If you like this video, if you want more of this content, leave a comment below, subscribe, and let us know. Bye for now.